Let's talk trash, because we are so tired of being tossed out onto our beautiful Tennessee roadways. It hurts, and it's UGLY. Come on, join the movement at NobodyTrashesTennessee.com. Brought to you by the Tennessee Department of Transportation.
How's Jay doing? Anybody heard? He didn't he have a...
Yeah, well, usually he gives me a text when he's doing stuff like this, but I haven't heard from him.
At this time, I'd like to call to order a special meeting of the Charter Commission, June 21st, and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Fritz?
Here.
Commissioner Smallridge?
Here.
Commissioner Ender? Commissioner Isbell? Commissioner White?
Here.
Commissioner Meade?
Here.
Commissioner Beauchamp? Here. Chairman Stonesifer?
Present.
6 here, and we have 2 absent right now.
Okay, thank you. At this time, would you please stand for the prayer led by Commissioner Fritz and the pledge led by Commissioner Meade.
Dear Father, we just thank you, Lord, for this day and the many blessings you have given us. We are thankful for your love, your grace, and your gift of salvation. Father, we are so unworthy, but we are so thankful that you love us anyway, Father. And Lord, we just come tonight, Lord, we ask that you have a special blessing upon our law director, Father, as he prepares to go undergo surgery tomorrow, Lord, that you just be with him and help him during this time, Lord, for a speedy recovery. And Father, just be with us as we go throughout this day. Help us, Father, to be examples of your love and grace for everyone, Father. And Lord, help us to be shining examples for that you would want us to be. And Lord, as we come tonight, Lord, to work on this charter, help us, Father, that the things that we do, Lord, be to your glory and for the betterment of this county. For in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Please join me in a pledge to our wonderful flag. Hand salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the minutes from the June 6th meeting.
Move for approval?
Second.
Motion made and second to approve the minutes from June 6th meeting. Any corrections or objections to the minutes? If not, all in favor, vote saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Do we have anyone here that would like to address the Charter Commission? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium and give your name and address.
Josh Anderson, 549 Brooks Gap Road, Clinton. Just had a suggestion. Was at a conference recently and spoke to a commissioner from Bradley County, and they have 2 commissioners per district, but they've recently changed their ballot to show seat A, seat B in each district. So you're not necessarily running, you're not running for the top 2 seats, you're running for one individual seat. So it might be something to consider for making any changes to commission. I think it would make the races probably more competitive, probably give us the 2 strongest candidates if everybody's not running together, and then you've got people single shooting a candidate or undervoting or something like that. So just something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, kind of a response to a suggestion. That's something that was discussed at some of the meetings I went to with the County Commission Association. And one of the issues of having an A and B is you can end up with, in many cases, a person that got significantly less votes winning, because 2 of the stronger people run for one, and then you have other people up for the B. Whereas if you have the top 2 vote getters get those 2 positions, then you always get the 2 top vote getters. If you split it to A and B and you either just run for A or run for B, you could literally have somebody that gets a third, gets a very small portion of the votes win on one side instead of the other side. And so it just, or you could have somebody unopposed for A and then 2 people running for B, and the person on A could get 20% of the votes cast and still win because they were unopposed, basically. And I think I prefer the way we're doing it. That's just my opinion. But I understand what he's saying, okay? But the experience has been in some of the other counties that you end up with, just like why do we have primaries? You don't have 4 people running for the same office, and then somebody that has 25% of the vote win, or 30% or something. Anyhow, that's just my response to what you're saying. He had also asked earlier, and we might want to cover this, the thing about having the charter have some kind of dictation of how we run the elections for county commission, being partisan or nonpartisan. And what we discovered after talking with the state is the state law already covers what the requirements are, and we have to comply with state law, so we really can't change that. There was a time in history where we could have, but once the state law specifically said this is how it's done, that time we can't go against existing state law when the charter is first adopted. Thanks.
Do you know when that law was passed?
About 2 years ago.
It's in our charter. We took it up a couple of meetings ago. Nobody brought it up, but it was in there. I just didn't want to bring it up.
For county commission, it was not.
Yeah.
Huh?
For county commissioners, it was not.
Sure.
until it was recently passed, we were totally legal in Anderson County to run as nonpartisan for county commissioners.
Yeah. And then after the law was changed, the parties still did the same thing and said that constables and the commission would not be partisan races, but if the law has been for quite a while, if the parties request a primary, then there has to be a primary.
And only one party so far requested. That's the reason you didn't have Democrats run under the primary.
Well, actually, this last time, both parties requested all elections to be.
No, the Democrats withdrew it.
I think in the case of one of the parties, they didn't intend to do that, but that is what their letter said. But if any one party requests a primary, the state law requires that there be a primary. Now, you don't have to run the primary if you don't want it. You can run as an independent, but that's an individual choice.
Gavin, I have a question,
Yes, sir.
because I might want to turn this over to Dr. Smallridge a minute, but what would it take to change what we have in the charter now to what Mr. Anderson was talking about?
Well, in fact, as originally drafted, it was drafted that way for a seat A and a seat B.
Right.
That's how it's done in Knox County, and as you know, we've worked off of the Knox County Charter and the Shelby County Charter. I'm not sure how it is in Shelby County, but that's how it originally was in the charter. And after discussions that came out, and you all informed me that it was the top 2 vote getters, and so we changed it to the way it currently is. And like Commissioner Meade was saying, your whole purpose all along has apparently been to remain the same, not change anything in county government, and only take advantage of certain things that a charter form of government allows you to do. So it's in there the way it's done right now, currently. For us to change it, we would simply have to revise the language back to the way it was 3 or 4 months ago. It would not be a difficult change.
Well, I was the one that asked about the constables and commissioners before, and we had someone say that they wouldn't support it. We only had 5 years, so I didn't bring it up after that. But if what Commissioner Meade and Commissioner Isbell is telling us is true, then we can't do that. Even if we had the votes, couldn't do it, I guess is what they're saying.
We even brought it up during the last meeting, Jay, the title and all that. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, you read the title and verse and everything out of the Tennessee Code.
My understanding is Republicans, if they want to hold a primary, they can hold a primary. But the Democrats, they've said no, and they're not going to hold a primary. And so, I mean, it'd be like a Republican primary only. I mean,
Well, I'm not talking about the partisan part, but I think what Mr. Anderson said made a lot of sense. With seat A and seat B.
Was there a handout? Did you provide a handout tonight?
Yes, sir.
I must have missed that. Okay. Also, I wonder if it'd be worthwhile to kind of summarize, where we are at this point and how much we got left to do and so on. Just a brief summary.
Well, okay, but at this time, I'd like to hand you before we hand you the gavel, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I move that we go to, since we have two commissioners in each district, that we go to seat A and seat B.
Okay. Do we have a second? One more call for a second. Motion fails for lack of second. I'll hand you back the gavel.
All right, thank you. Gavin? it's up to
Yes,
you.
sir. Okay, we'll pick up where we left off last time. If I may, I'll just give a brief summary, if you'd like.
Thank you.
Really, the only thing left that we have to do, there's a few legal points with Jay that I'd like to discuss with him a little further, and that's the bulk of the remaining work to be done. There is one thing that I would mainly like to accomplish tonight, and that is section
If
7.
I can ask a question, I've got a couple of things here that look like new drafts, but I'm not sure which one's the new one. I think I had this already, so it was the one that was here, the one that you just handed out? Did you put them out to all the tables?
I believe I handed you one. If I didn't, there are extra
Okay, is there a
copies.
mark on these that I can tell which one's the newest one?
Yes.
I can't from the
If
cover.
you look at page 3, the newest one has only section 412 highlighted on page 3 in the table of contents. I think the other one has highlighted General Sessions Court. That's the
Okay.
that's the first marker.
Okay, then I'm really confused, because for me, the page 3 of this, of both of these documents is still the appendix, the
Table of contents.
Yes, it
table of
is.
contents.
Yes, on the table of contents on page 3, Constables is in red, and section 4.
Oh, okay, it's the one that's marked.
Yes.
Correct.
The one you just handed
Okay, so
out.
now I got the right one in front of me. Thank you.
So for the summary, there's really not that much left to go. Everything, I believe, is provided for. There's a couple of points, like I said, I would like to discuss with Jay, and I will, hopefully he'll get to watch this tonight, and I can speak into the mic, and he can, we can discuss those later. And I think he was going to send me a couple of his notes from last meeting. But the one thing I wanted to go over tonight is section 7.05, and we'll get there when we get there. It has to do with the Charter Review Commission. I'm not sure that we've ever, or you all have ever, decided how the Charter Review Committee was going to be comprised, whether it was going to be the Charter Commission or whether it was going to be the county legislative body, or how that was going to work. If you want to go to it now, we can. That's the,
Yeah. Well,
What page
We
is
can-
that on?
that's on page 30, sir. Subsection D right there at the bottom. There was a vote, and it was the review to take place every 6 years. And then you'll see there, Charter Review Committee. And then it shall be composed of, I don't have those numbers, how many members it's gonna have. I've got one there, but I'll move that based on what you all decide, if you decide tonight.
I think it's probably a good idea for the actual formal review process to have a new committee assigned. But also talk with Jay about the fact that the Charter Commission could stay in place and then be replaced with attrition by the County Commission. And they would be the ones that would give a quick review of some recommended change or something coming from the public, just to have some people there to have a little bit of background and can keep up. But I think that the 6-year review should probably be separately selected. And I don't think the people necessarily that have been on the Charter Commission would be restricted from that membership, but I don't think it should just be them. That's my own input. And so it's, what page is this part on? So we can...
This is on page 30, subsection D. If you read on down, it's written, it's got a few numbers plugged in there. How this is written, there would be a charter review committee composed of, 10 members, 5 from the legislative body, and then 5 from the citizen members who are registered voters.
There has to be one from each district, though.
That's how it's written in here.
Yeah, and then some number that are appointed by the mayor.
I don't think that that's a requirement. This is how we got it out of Knox County, and I don't think it's been resolved since Anderson County Charter Commission has been in existence.
So we have to decide how many members are on this review committee? Is that right?
Yes, sir. Whether it's comprised of the Charter Commission itself, this body, or the charter or the county legislative body, or a mixture of the two.
If we did a review committee, do members of the legislative body have to serve on the review committee?
I don't think that's a requirement.
What this actually says is that there would be a person from each district nominated by the legislative body, and then some number nominated by the county mayor. Not more than 2 people from with not more than 2 such citizen members who are registered, without more than 2 being from the same district. So the one from each district, and then 2 that can be from any of the districts, just not the same district for the. I would recommend that we do that it's composed of 10, then the number 10, 1 member from each of the legislative districts, which would be 8, and then 2 citizen members who are registered voters in Anderson County and who are not members of the legislative body denominated by the county mayor. Not more than 2 such members who are registered voters of the county shall be nominated from each legislative district. And so I think that would kind of do it.
How could you do it? Because we have 8 districts.
Yeah.
Okay, but not more than 2.
And then 2 of them are done countywide, but they couldn't both be from the same district, because then you would have 3 from the same district.
But you said the Charter Commission could be dissolved also this same review committee. Is that not right?
The Charter Commission would be dissolved. If this happened, it'd be the review committee.
Correct.
If
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to have 10, does it?
No, Mr. Chairman. It's up to you all. I don't think there's
So
any.
we could do 8. We got to have it from, there has to be representatives from each district.
I believe so.
We understand that.
Yep.
What's
But the way this is written right now, and I think the intent of the way this is designed, is to give the legislative body the primary control over this organization, but then give the mayor and her roles, the head of the executive branch of government, some say in who some of the members are. That doesn't seem unreasonable to me.
Fine with me.
And she could bring in a little different point of view from a couple different people in the county. They just can't both be from the same district, the way this is written.
What's the,
So we're talking 10 people, one from each legislative district and 2 appointed by the mayor. Is that correct?
that's correct.
And
And those two,
confirmed by
those
the
two can't be
legislative
from
body.
the same district,
I'm sorry.
And
the way this is written right now.
and confirmed, voted upon by the legislative body is in
Right.
there also.
The legislative body has to approve all of them.
All of them.
What's the pleasure of the commission?
Well, that would be my, I don't know if it has to be a motion or not, but that it be the 10 and then the 2 in that blank, 2 citizen members, registered voters, and then the final vote, just like it says, the legislative body would approve the final composition.
So if this is done, does this, so we go away after it's voted on?
No, the Charter Commission stays in place as an advisory role during the time, but this is every 6 years you have a formal review of the charter.
I think the way it's written, if the charter passes, it would be, the commission would have to act on it after that.
The way this is written, correct. There's no provision, as far as I'm aware, the way this is written, there's no provision for this body after this charter takes effect, if it takes
Well,
effect.
Jay said he was gonna cover that with you, but
He hasn't talked to me
Yeah.
about that.
you're both pretty busy guys.
Well, if he suggests something to make provision for this body going forward, I'm happy to put that in there. If you all want me to make that, I can see about doing that and do that for the next meeting.
I mean, I personally don't see the need of this committee, but you're gonna have another committee doing the review. I mean, because that's basically what we're doing now. And if you're gonna have another committee come in here and do it, then there's no need for this committee, charter commission.
That's true. That's what they're saying. Our job,
This committee would only exist every 10 years for the review and then be gone. I mean, every 6 years.
6 years.
Because whether we eliminate this commission altogether, because who knows, every 6 years, half of us may not be here. So that way the commission, when they appoint somebody, staff's seeing new
Well,
blood every time. Because you don't know where each one of us may be living, whether or not we have, are,
Yeah.
or even still here. And this way, you have a new commission every single time,
But-
every 6 years.
that's true, but if you look at this, it says on or before March 1st, 2032.
Correct.
Yeah,
The-
because this won't go into effect.
Until 2026.
But this is only what the Knox County had. I mean, just
Well,
an
it's-
example, something to follow, right?
That's my understanding, correct. It's how Knox County has it, and I haven't received any direction as to.
What would be the role then of this committee between now and 6 years? What do we do?
Okay, there's a referendum to change the charter, and then we would be the first ones to discuss it.
Charter doesn't take effect until if it passes, till 2026.
Correct.
And then I believe we said there'd be no changes for 6 years.
Unless somebody does that.
Unless there are, so as Jay talked about last time, there's a couple different ways to amend it.
Yes.
There's the petition by the voters of the county, there's through the legislative body of Anderson County. But this is just an informal, or a formal committee to, once every 6 years, come together
Review it.
for the purpose of reviewing the charter.
Yes.
That's what this is.
So we would have a role,
Yes.
they would have a role.
It would not necessarily dissolve this committee. now, in 2032 it would.
Correct.
Unless we say this
There's-
committee is the review committee.
Unless that's made correct. If this committee is made the review committee. There's no provision for the dissolution of this body in the statutes that I can see. So it just has effective date of charter, and that's it.
I just think if there's questions about what's going on, even before it goes into effect, that this group that's been involved in all these discussions for a number of years, to not be involved would seem strange, to have a bunch of people that were involved in any of this development be the ones that make the decision on that. But this 6-year review, I think that's when you want to have fresh eyes.
Well, but
Yeah.
But from now, if it passes from now until 2032,
Mm-hmm.
this body could stay in.
Yeah, could stay in place. This body, I think, there's no provisional law for exactly when it goes away, so I think that's really a decision of this body, saying that we've decided that it's no longer necessary and adjourned permanently, or the county legislative body probably there may be some way that they have some authority to determine it's over, but I don't think they do either. I think it really comes down to whoever's on this committee, but anybody that leaves the committee would be replaced by the county commission, just like any other elected officials in the county. I don't know, what do you think, Tim?
I thought that there was a provision there that the legislative body could make changes. Or recommend, I think the way that he spoke is that the legislative body could recommend changes to this body. I think that's the way he spoke about it.
Yeah.
Fine with me.
And they would get reviewed here first. Yeah, I think that was the way it was.
Yeah, it was the legislative body can come up with it, and just like a committee, it would come to this commission to take up.
And then if they decide to do that, they'd still end up being in a referendum, is the way I understand it. I think
Correct.
even the legislative body can't change the charter except for some very minor things, I think,
I'm not sure that even minor things can be
Yeah.
changed.
Vote of the people.
I mean, a spelling error or a grammar error or something. I guess we probably couldn't change it, but we could make a statement clarifying it, if it was something like that.
So do we need a motion, or we don't need to do it?
If we, it's whatever, the floor is open.
Well, I don't know if I'm gonna be on here 6 years or not. I don't even know if I'm gonna be alive 6 years or not, but, I mean, we have a committee in place and we have mechanisms of how to make changes. It wrote into the thing from whether it's the legislative body referring back to this committee or whatever. In 6 years, we could have a whole half new committee here, or whatever. And since we have the mechanism already here, I'd like to make the motion that we still let the Charter Commission in place be the review committee.
Yeah. I agree that, I think the Charter Commission should stay in place just as a body that the commission can come to, and the people that are selected for being on the Charter Commission should have an obligation to study the charter so they can discuss it knowledgeably if anything comes up.
I don't think that we're talking about the Charter Commission as such. We're talking about a charter review.
Oh, yeah, this paragraph is absolutely separate from what we just talked about.
Yes.
This is a charter review every 6 years that is selected at that time to do an independent review of the charter.
I don't have any problem with the way it's written.
As long as we put in the 10 and the 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's even saying, you know, this review can also be the Charter Commission.
Gabby?
Is that not?
Well, there's nothing that keeps the legislative body from picking any of us to be on that because of our experience. But I still think the Charter Commission needs to stay in place until there's no longer use for it. But I think this needs to be,
This needs to be in the
selected
charter.
individually, just like it says.
This needs to be in the charter.
Oh, yeah, this needs to be in the charter, that we have every 6 years, we have a review, and that this is the way we select the people that are on that committee. And then they bring it back for whatever they recommend for changes, would have to come back to the legislative body. And then, depending upon how the state law works, either has to go for a referendum or not.
Well, it's 2/3
Yeah.
vote of the,
Yeah.
Well, these 8 right here represents each district
yes.
Yeah.
in Anderson County.
Yeah.
We could let this review committee be comprised of these 8 members, and then the mayor select her 2 or 3. And as Chuck was alluding to, as we, as charter members, as we leave our, as we pass on or whatever, the commission could replace or replenish as needed.
I don't intend to stay on the Charter Commission until I die.
I'm just saying, but we've got 8 districts here represented.
Right. Yeah, we're not debating that. I mean, this,
I understand.
this Charter Commission would stay in place until the Charter Review Commission.
Okay, if this passes, which I hope it does not, I hope the public turns it down real solidly. But if it did pass, I think it would be a great advantage at the first review for some of us that's been building this charter to be on this review committee, to where we would have some kind of inkling as what has
Right.
happened up to that point. And, yeah, because there's been a lot of work done.
But that would be up to the legislative body, right, to appoint some of us or none of us?
Any one of us that left, for
But-
whatever reason, it'd be up to the county commission, legislative body, to reappoint
Yeah,
someone to fill that spot from that district. I think, as we're saying, every district needs to be represented.
Has to be.
I certainly agree that every district needs to be represented. I also think the mayor needs to be represented, okay? And I think it makes a lot of sense to leave this body in place and then replaced by the commission as necessary until the first time this happens. And then those guys be kind of on call until the next one.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm
I
saying.
make that a motion.
The motion would be to approve this with the 8 plus the 2.
And the mayor appoint the 2.
Yes, that's what it says. But that happens in March 1st, on or before March 1st, 2032.
And we would need, I think.
And until that time, this commission would be in place as in an advisory role to the commission.
And we would need to contact Steve Emmert to see if he was interested in continuing or to replace him,
Yeah.
have the county commission replace Steve Emmert or anyone else of us
Yeah.
that didn't want to continue.
Yep.
Bring it up to date and go with that.
That's your motion,
That's my motion.
as it's written.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, as this is written, and that this body stays in place and is has replacements as necessary by the county commission until this whole thing happens.
In 2032.
In 2032, yeah.
Is there not a motion on the floor already? He made a
There's a motion just to approve this.
Did you make
But
the
the
motion,
other
Chuck?
thing is actually a separate.
But there wasn't a second.
Oh, then I'll take my,
Or do we can combine them, I don't care.
I'm sorry, Chuck, I guess I forgot that.
I thought he had made the second, sorry.
Oops. What's the difference in them?
My motion was to let the Charter Commission be the review committee also.
I wasn't listening because I guess that's exactly what I said.
No.
Okay.
And I didn't get a second, so I
No.
mean,
No second.
So, go with
Yeah.
Jerry's.
Commissioner White made a motion. Did we get a second?
I'll second.
Motion second. Any other discussion?
Can you read the motion again, or? I think I got it.
The motion would be that, to what's written here,
Indeed.
but the present Charter Commission stays intact until 2032, March 1st, 2032.
And at that time, that's the first time this would actually be implemented.
Yes.
No, that's fine.
Not until 32, until the first, oh, I guess you're right, because it don't take effect until
2026.
6, so the 6 years would be the 32.
Yeah.
I'm a little slow.
You're on it.
There are some of us that might not be around it.
Yeah.
Well, I sure don't intend to be on this charter commission then, but I might be. But you know, sorry.
No, after this, I got to answer to your previous question, but go ahead. Go ahead and take this vote.
Okay. Any other comments? Got that, Gavin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So this stays as written, and it's also agreed that the Charter Commission with replacements would continue in place until this is exercised.
That's correct.
And Mr. Chairman, with his,
I'll vote for that.
with our outside constable here, maybe we could get his opinion as to whether or not we're on the right track.
It's up to you ultimately. I have no vote on the Charter Commission.
Yeah, we can-
Whether
But you're
you're
providing us
Yeah.
legal counsel.
correct. I seem to agree with you, Commissioner White. Having somebody that's been on the commission, doing the work, looking at the provisions, being on, and the commission remaining in existence until March 1st, 2026. And at that time can be replaced by, or as they go on,
As
replaced by the legislative body. Yep.
Okay. All set.
And
We'll
this
ask-
is consistent with the discussions I've had with the law director.
If all, that ends the discussion, we'll ask clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Fritz,
no.
Commissioner Smallridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Isbell,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Meade,
Yes.
Commissioner Bochamp,
Yes,
Chairman Stonecipher.
Yes.
6 yes and 1 no.
Mr. Chairman, if we go
Yes.
back up to A and B, and it talks about how things can be changed at the very top of the page. And then B, where it's talking about the legislative body of Anderson County may frame and by a favorable vote of 2/3 of the legislative body propose amendments to this charter. Except as otherwise provided in a subsection, every ordinance proposing a charter amendment shall be introduced in the form and manner and governed by the procedure and requirements prescribed for ordinances generally. Every such ordinance proposing a charter amendment shall contain after an enacting clause the following and no other matter: a statement that the charter amendment set out in the ordinance is proposed for submission to the voters of the county in accordance with the requirements of this charter.
Mhm.
And two, the full text of the proposed charter amendment. Such any ordinance shall become effective upon adoption, and its effect shall be to require that the county clerk immediately deliver a certified copy of the ordinance to the County Election Commission, and that the Election Commission submit the proposed charter amendment therein contained to the voters of the county as provided in section 7.05E.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's another way to amend the charter.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's three ways, I think, it's in here.
Okay, I think that's going to be the largest item of discussion. We can go back now to the beginning of the charter. I'll try to go really quickly, but don't let me go too quickly. There's some language in here that was requested last time. If you look at section 1.01 on page 6, it was requested last time that we include also the general laws of the state of Tennessee, and that has been done. In section 1.02, there was, I had some notes on my copy. Stop me if I'm going too fast. There was some notes on my copy that this section,
Page 6.
Five and six, not in mine.
Oh, you don't. You didn't have
See?
that?
This is 4, and this is 7.
Oh.
Do you, is this the last copy?
That is, yes.
Here, I'll look on his.
No, that's not the last copy. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I've got plenty. The most recent copy. That's what it is.
Okay,
Just to restate, section 1.01, the county can perform any function which is not denied by the general laws of the state of Tennessee and the Constitution, as was requested. Section 1.02, private and local affairs, same page, 6. I had some notes in here, I think they were from Jay, to add a little bit of clarity in here as to the listing not just the mayor of Anderson County and the legislative body of Anderson County, but include also the school system and any other powers and functions of any county elected officials that exist outside of the mayor and the legislative body. So you can see there I've added, except those powers reserved, all powers that counties possess generally shall be exercised by the mayor and legislative body, except those reserved by the judiciary, board of education, and elected charter and constitutional officers as defined by the Constitution of the state of Tennessee, just to try to make it more broad and add some clarity to that.
And that's no change the way we do business, right?
Correct, that is no change.
right.
On the next page, moving on, page 7, section 2.01, we talked about regulating the public conduct right there in red and affairs of the residents of the county. That was requested.
Yep, that's what we decided.
On page 8, excuse me, subsection C.
Yeah.
I think Jay mentioned that.
Yeah, the proper word is resolution.
Correct. Ordinance was there, and so the county commission was going to be able to change certain policies, I believe, of the county financial management system by resolution, how it's been done, and how it is done currently, so that has been changed. to resolution.
Ordinance are to pass what we would like normally think of as laws in the
Correct.
county, but a
Mhm.
resolution is the way we do business.
Correct.
I think that's why this is important. Use the resolution term.
Page 9. I've redrafted this section and the comparable section with the county mayor. Has to do with appointing members to subcommittees, local boards, commissions, and things of that nature. Jay and I discussed maybe that there was a distinction. So the mayor has a statutory power of appointment to all members of the boards and commissions within the county. He was worried that we were, excuse me, maybe infringing on that a little bit, and so I wanted to add some clarity to this provision as to the county legislative body's power of appointment. And this is basically to make it in accordance with state law. So the county legislative body has the power to appoint members to those bodies created by them for, say, study committees or any similar subcommittees of the county legislative body to make recommendations or things like that. In any other boards or commissions that they are allowed to appoint members to as authorized by general law. That's what I'm trying to make the distinction there. So the general rule would be the statutory, the statute 56101, I think, that allows the mayor to appoint all members of all boards in the county. And then this would be in accordance with general law. The county commission or the county legislative body appoints those members that it is allowed to under.
Again, this is to make sure we
Correct.
do it just like we've been doing.
Correct. That's yes. I may say it in a long-winded way, but that's what I'm trying to say. It's just how it is. Moving on. To page 14. I imagine you all may want to discuss this some. I know Jay, I think, has a couple of notes for me here. I'll just go in order here. I think there was a question as to, if you'll see right there on page 14, little b, where it's highlighted there, upon the 8th day. There was a question as to whether an emergency ordinance may go into effect quicker than 8 days.
Oh, yeah.
The statute says that it may go into effect upon the day of its passage. So,
if it's signed by the mayor that day.
I don't believe so. The emergency ordinance, for example, Shelby County has emergency ordinances such that they don't have to be submitted to the county mayor. They just automatically go into effect. I brought the statute with me here. So the charter statutes say that an ordinance shall not take effect until 15 days, except in a case of an emergency ordinance. An emergency ordinance may become effective upon the day of its final passage, provided that it shall contain the statement that an emergency exists and shall specify with distinctness the facts and reasons constituting such emergency. He goes on to say that it has to be unanimous of the members, a unanimous vote of the members present. I'm not aware of a requirement that an emergency ordinance has to be submitted to the mayor. Now, I may be wrong on that. I may be corrected by Jay next time. So that's what that first comment bubble right there is what I'm quoting here, 51211. An emergency ordinance may become effective upon the day of its final passage. So that would be the second reading.
Yeah, and what we have right here now in writing allows that.
Correct.
But it says that if the mayor signs it on that day, then it goes into effect It's hard for me to, I don't know about you guys, it's hard for me to imagine something that would come up that would be so urgent that it would get a unanimous vote of everyone present at a county commission meeting, and that the mayor would then declare that she's not gonna sign it, unless it was something pretty substantial.
Well, what,
I say she, that's just the condition of who the mayor is right now.
well, if,
But it sounds like there's room in law that if it's a full vote of the entire commission, an emergency,
there has to be
thing
proof.
can go into effect before the mayor even signs it.
Well, there's proof of, that it's an emergency, is what they're saying, and, I think that's very legitimate.
The way it's written right now would keep it the same way we've been doing business.
Okay.
I mean, even in an
It doesn't
emergency,
go into effect unless the mayor signs it, and when it gets to the end of a certain number of days, it goes into effect without her signature. I don't mind it being 8, I think the 8th day is plenty of time on an emergency item.
Let me just state, I'm not trying to change how it's written at all. I just wanted to note that there was a question asked to me last time whether it could
Right.
go into effect faster, and I'm telling you, I believe so. In fact, I'll read from Shelby County's charter, and again, I'm not trying to put Shelby County on you, but it says, every ordinance and resolution except emergency ordinances of the Board of County Commissioners shall be submitted to the county mayor. So what that basically is saying is that emergency ordinances do not have to be submitted.
Don't have to be.
Commissioner Fritz, did you have a?
my question was, even with it being an emergency, does it have to be unanimous vote? Or does it 3/4 vote, or?
That's what he just read, unanimous of the
I mean,
people present.
does law require it to be unanimous? Or can it be 3/4 vote?
The law states, the unanimous vote of all the members of the legislative body present shall be required to pass an emergency ordinance. And so
And then that's somebody else's charter or the state law?
that's state law.
Okay.
I was just curious because, somebody could hold after,
But
regardless.
But it also appears that it can go into effect without the mayor's approval under state law.
Yes.
That's
But not the way
that's how
we've
I
done-
read the
That's not the
statute,
way we've
correct.
done business, and
And
one
I'm
of my
not,
goals in this whole endeavor is to keep everything the same that we can, in only those few places where it's an advantage to the citizens of the county, we have change.
So whatever the legislative body says is an emergency, is an emergency?
it states that the emergency ordinance shall contain a statement that an emergency exists and specify with distinctness the facts and reasons constituting such emergency. So to answer your
Have to
question,
have
yes.
some
Yeah,
statement.
Yeah.
Well, if something is deemed an emergency and it truly is an emergency, you don't want to sit around for 8 days.
No, that would only be if the mayor refuses to sign it. Like I said, I have a hard time, if it was truly an emergency activity, we had to come up with funding and labor to put the air conditioning in the courthouse back in service. I don't think that we, or something like that, I don't think there would be a big
Well-
debate over not we're gonna do it right away.
Anybody want to change it or leave it like it is?
If it's a state law, why would we want to change it? If he's reading us the,
We
Well,
have,
to keep it the same way we've been doing business, which is what a lot of us kind of,
but the law allows for it to go into the charter without the mayor signing off on it. I I'm sensing no change.
Tim, you read it, what do you think?
No change. I think it gives all the power to everybody that needs to. Like I said before, this is gonna be a completely different set of people that's going to be carrying this out.
Yeah.
So that's what we're looking at. We gotta look at this without any faces whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I think this really covers it.
Okay, move on, Gavin.
Yes, sir.
So, we're talking, if the mayor, if we have an emergency and the mayor doesn't sign it, we're talking 8 days.
That's correct.
Unless she vetoes it, then we'd have to have a meeting, a special call meeting to override the veto.
If it's an emergency, 8 days maybe. Am I reading that
No,
right?
but again, I can't imagine any mayor, if there's truly an emergency that gets a unanimous vote of the entire legislative body, is gonna go basically on TV and say, yeah, but I'm not gonna approve it.
Yeah, I'm just,
Okay.
I'm not alluding to our, anything about our current mayor or anything. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It just seems like if it's an emergency, 8 days could be a problem.
Yeah. You got to just look to the future. What if,
Yeah.
Did Jay say something that there's a statute of so many days that the mayor had regardless? Didn't he allude to that?
For any anything we do, she has up to 10 days
And this
before
cuts-
she
this
has to either
actually cuts
veto or
it
it goes
back.
into effect.
And this cuts it back to the 8th day?
In this case, on the 8th day, it would go into effect if she didn't veto it.
Yeah.
And if she did veto it, we would have to have a special, the legislature at the time would have to have a special call meeting to override the veto.
So I remember talking about it, and at one time, we talked about cutting it back to 3 days. And didn't he say that wasn't under state law, that wasn't possible, or?
but that was a non-emergency. He's talking about emergency here, and he's read from this law of what we can do for emergency.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like we could comply with state law and not change very much because we didn't have emergency. Until we had the charter, we didn't really have the ability to pass an emergency resolution. Maybe we should make this 3 days. That she has 3 days to make up her mind if she doesn't sign it right away, and then it goes into effect. I don't see a reason in that the state law allows it to go into effect immediately without her signature.
Yeah.
If we gave her 3 days, that certainly gives her time to give her views, take another look if she wants to, and still get something done pretty quickly.
I agree with that.
I'm of the opinion that if it's an emergency and it gets all the votes, it has to be unanimous for those present. That put it in here, you don't need the mayor's signature. There shouldn't be have to be a signature on that.
Well, the fact of the matter is, there doesn't have to be according to state law under a charter form of government, okay? But that would be, taking away that power of the mayor would be a pretty significant change from the way we've been doing business, that's all
I'm not talking about on every.
No, only if we
I
never
mean,
had
just-
we didn't have emergency resolutions before, that's new to the charter,
Well,
okay? But, in every other resolution, the mayor's already had the authority to not sign. But in an emergency, it's moved up to much less time. And part of what I promised my constituents is I would try to make sure that we only change those things that were substantial advantage to the county. And I think having this emergency measure is one of the charter things that allows us a little bit more ability to move quickly. And we could just delete that whole thing about the mayor if we want to, and just say that it would go in effect immediately in accordance with current state law, or.
That's what he said Shelby County did.
Correct. If you read Shelby County's,
Yeah.
I'll just read it here. So it says, an emergency ordinance may become effective upon the date of its final passage, provided it shall contain the statement that an emergency exists and shall specify with distinctness the facts and reasons that constitutes such emergency. That's just state law. The unanimous vote of all members of the legislative body present shall be required to pass an emergency ordinance. However, at least 2/3 of the legally constituted body must be present and voting. An emergency ordinance shall be so designated in its caption and shall be published in a newspaper of general circulation prior to its second reading. That's how Shelby County has it.
Well, then I move that we mirror Shelby County's,
Yeah. I would second that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Any other discussion?
And so this will be reworded to match the,
It's, if it passes.
Motion made and second. That's the clerk for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Fritz,
aye.
Commissioner Smallridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Isbell,
Aye.
Commissioner White, Commissioner Dean,
aye.
Commissioner Bochamp,
Aye.
Chairman Stonesifer.
Aye.
7
Motion,
absent.
motion passes.
Hey, I've got a question. When it talks about prior to its second reading and over here in this other one, to me, it looks like we'd have to meet twice on the emergency ordinance to have a second reading.
Correct. It has to be passed similar to a regular ordinance. So the statute says that an ordinance shall not take effect. The ordinance shall be, it has to be passed in the method similar to how an ordinance is regularly passed. So 2 different days, open session of the legislative body before its adoption, is how I believe.
So in other words, we'd have to have a second reading even if it was an emergency.
That's my
So
understanding.
then you couldn't act on it that day until we had the second reading.
There would have
Is
to
that
have,
correct?
That's correct. Even though, that's what I'm saying, we'd have to advertise and meet again, however long that takes,
10 days.
5 days.
5 days, so, but, at least you'd be saving 8 days or whatever for the signature time. So after the second 5 days, we can meet, implement it.
Well, I was,
What has to be the time between a first and second reading?
the statute says not less than 1 week.
Which then, we get right back to that 8 days that's already in there.
For an emergency action, you have to wait a week before you can act on it.
The second reading.
Does that make sense to anybody? That you
No,
have an emergency thing and you have to wait a week before you
That's why
can
I'm bringing it
finalize?
up. You know, we were thinking that we're voting as something we can get done immediately, but according to the way that it's wrote, it has to be 2 readings.
I didn't read it.
That's my understanding. If you want me to check on that and make sure that emergency ordinances have to be on 2 readings.
It's in both paragraphs, even Shelby
Right.
County and this one over here.
Yeah, I think we have to research and make sure that we really are restricted under state law from taking an emergency action for a week.
See, that's why I think, you know, in what our law director was talking about, that's why they come up with that 8 days. Because during that 8 days, it's time for our second reading, and the mayor's got a chance to say yes or no during that time we're waiting for the second reading.
The second reading has to be at least 5 days notice.
7.
Yeah.
7.
But what this says right now is that, the one that we had here, okay, is that after the second reading and it passes, the mayor has 8 days.
Okay. So that puts it out.
May be adopted upon a second reading at the next meeting of the legislative body. And such emergency ordinance shall be effective either upon the signature of the mayor or in the absence of veto after 8 days.
And I know that's the way it works, like in the city of Rocky Top, they have to have 2 readings.
You got,
Yeah,
well, we just need to leave it just the way it passed.
yeah.
Okay.
So tell me what
I'm sorry.
what are we thinking right
Well,
now?
either way, it was gonna be another meeting.
Is my understanding, if you'd like me to make sure I can.
And on the,
definitely do
what we just passed would eliminate any veto and waiting period.
After the second reading and
Yeah,
passage
after the
by
second.
unanimous of all those present.
Okay, that's the state law, but can we do something different in the charter?
Well, what I would like to ask, and this is just me speaking for myself, okay, is if we have an honest to God emergency, we ought to be able to act in less than a week. Somehow, it's hard for me to believe that, I mean, I can understand for normal operations, having the first and second reading of most things makes perfect sense.
The way our commission is set up now, if we have an emergency, like if a heated air unit goes down, I think the mayor and the purchasing agent, up to a certain amount, what is it, 50,000 or something
Yeah.
like that, can go ahead and make that decision and get it done.
Yeah. Up to a certain dollar amount.
Yeah.
Well, I think the sheriff's department done that last night. You know, they'd already, on their air conditioner units, they'd done, started the ball rolling.
Yeah. Under that or
Yeah,
resolution, maybe.
yeah, and I would consider that an emergency.
Yeah.
You got prisoners and you have to prop the doors open to where they can breathe.
That's right.
Yeah,
And they can also walk out.
I can see both sides of this,
Yeah.
but you don't wanna get to the, I think what lawmakers are sort of fearful of is everything might get to be an emergency that they won't pass. So I think it's sort
Well,
of precautionary.
The system is worked pretty well, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it could go wrong. It could have a big issue between
You understand this?
whoever is the current mayor and the legislative body in terms of emergency, but it has, kind of back up and change in a way. It's worked pretty well. If we have an emergency, I think we would work together in almost all cases.
Right.
We always have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what Steve's been saying.
I think another important factor that came up because of this discussion about the sheriff's department, if it comes down to just, if we're approving some money or a shift in the budget, that's not a resolution. I mean, if the sheriff came into the meeting last night and said, oh my God, I gotta have $300,000 for the following reason, and then everybody agrees, we could have changed the budget right then. And so this doesn't keep you from doing anything. And my experience with most emergencies is because you gotta spend a bunch of money on something.
Right.
Not because you're replacing somebody on a committee, you're making a resolution about how we're gonna run something.
Well, I think it would be good going forward to make sure that there's a good explanation of this. So it can't be misconstrued as to say, well, we can't really do it because we have to wait for the second reading, or, I'm just trying to prepare for people going forward because we know
Yeah.
we've been on here long enough to know what happens.
Now, this is an emergency ordinance that we're talking about here. We're not talking about response to an emergency condition where we have to spend some money right away. This is passing an emergency ordinance may be added to the agenda of the meeting, rather than, and how it would be done. And so here we're talking about passing a law that we consider as an emergency. So I don't think that this, I think the way that we just change this could be just perfectly fine.
I do too.
So it doesn't actually pertain to financial,
No,
Purchase.
this is emergency ordinance.
which is a law, basically.
It's basically passing a law.
If I may offer something on that, in here, there's the provision that incorporates the County Financial Management System Act. And so and there's also the ability of the county legislative body to amend the policies and procedures of that act by resolution, as we just saw a moment ago. So anything financial,
Right.
I don't think will be dealt with via an emergency ordinance. Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
And that's right before the transition provisions, isn't it? And the last one that we did, like on page 38.
So all we
Correct.
really did with that change we just voted on is we said that the county commission can pass an emergency ordinance without having it, waiting for the mayor to sign.
That's true.
In the regular ordinance, we gotta get her signature.
That's
She
right.
has the normal, veto authority. But
Right.
for an emergency ordinance, is there anything that it defines emergency ordinance, what that means?
It is. It's in the definitions in this charter.
Yeah.
I don't know that it'll be of much help in defining. Yeah, it is defined in here. It's a definition without defining. I think it says that the phrase emergency ordinance shall mean any local legislation with regard to any subject within the definition of ordinance as provided in this section 703D of this charter, adopted by the legislative body in accordance with the formality as set forth in this charter and in all applicable laws of the state of Tennessee. There may be a better yeah,
So it only applies to ordinances,
correct.
and it has to meet, and we have to go through this process to pass it, the 2/3 quorum, unanimous vote, and all that. I think that covers it pretty well. And it opens up our ability to do this, which is a new thing in the charter, having the emergency ordinances. In fact, ordinances are new in the charter.
Right. But we've already passed it, so.
The other note I had, I believe Jay made a comment, or Jay mentioned that there was a conflict, an apparent conflict between section 210, this is on page 14 still, on section 210, submitted to the Anderson County Mayor, provided, however, this requirement shall not apply to ordinances, emergency ordinances, and resolution affecting zoning regulations. So that only applies to zoning regulations, is how that's written in there. And I don't think it conflicts with 2.09, but if he saw that a different way, hopefully he's watching right now and he can give me his notes on that.
In 210, we're saying that the emergency ordinance has to be submitted to the mayor.
Well, that's how it was in there originally,
Yeah.
correct. But what you just
And
passed.
so if to do what we just did in the previous section, we would have to vote to remove emergency ordinance from that list.
Correct. So.
And in that I agree with the change we made to B up there, I would make a motion that we delete emergency ordinance from 210A, the first line. Everybody see where I'm talking about?
I do.
Second.
Got a second? Motion and a second to eliminate emergency ordinance from 210A. Provided, however,
And the
that
comma following it.
requirement shall not apply to ordinances and resolutions affecting zoning regulations.
Yep.
Yeah, leave out the other.
All that stays in place.
Any discussion, any disagreement with that? Okay, go ahead, Gavin.
Commissioner Fritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Smallridge,
Aye.
Commissioner Isbell,
Aye.
Commissioner White. Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
Commissioner Bochamp. Chairman Sunflower.
Aye. Okay, that carries.
Quickly, through some minor changes to language. On page 15, section 3.03, section A, or any other elected official is listed there. J requested that based on keeping the county elected officials' duties separate from the mayor. Stating that basically the mayor can't perform the duties of the county elected officials.
Right.
On page 16,
Mr. Chairman, before we get really ahead of this, if we go back over on page 15 under D, and I know we just took up about the mayor, again, it addresses how she can veto a emergency ordinance right here. If the mayor of Andrews County fails to either sign or veto an ordinance or a resolution and report his action to the county clerk within 10 days after ordinance or resolution is required for this charge to be submitted to the mayor, or within 3 days in the case of an emergency ordinance.
Well, we need to strike that,
Yeah.
take that out, since we passed the other.
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah, so emergency ordinances needs to be deleted in that part A, and then the "and" needs to be moved over before ordinances, charter, this charter, resolutions, and ordinances of the legislative body. Right?
Well,
It needs to be reworded such that emergency ordinances are not on the list.
well, on page 15,
Yeah.
he'll delete those.
correct.
Okay?
I notice there's some place where emergency ordinance is on a list on the top of that page as well. Yeah, that would be in part C that's continued from page 14.
I will redraft it in accordance with how it was
Approved.
approved, correct, yes. On page 16, section E, this is kind of what I was talking about earlier with, and Jay, I'm sure will comment on this, but this is drafted in accordance with 56106, which is the mayor powers and duties under state law. Again, it says this almost verbatim, except as otherwise provided by Tennessee law, special or private act, and this charter. The mayor shall appoint members of all boards, authorities, commissions, departments, and committees. And so, again, the legislative body would be able to appoint members to those boards that it created as like a study committee, or that it has the authority to appoint to under state law. So
Right.
it's almost an exception. So that's just a language, and I'll run that by Jay also. H, on the same page here, there was mention made, I think, last time about this language being contradictory to the County Financial Management System Act of 1981. That blurb on the side right there is deleted language. It says, contracts and purchases on behalf of the county shall be entered into by the mayor or the mayor's designee. I had a note that said it had to be signed by the purchasing agent and the finance director, I believe.
Director,
Yeah. So I've stricken that.
Because
As
we're
being
under-
inconsistent
Because we're under
with
the
the-
81 Act,
Correct.
that's the way it works.
Correct.
If later on the legislative body changed to a different
Mhm.
financial act, then
Right.
that
Correct.
could change. Again, that's doing it the same
The
way we've been
same,
doing it.
correct. Moving ahead to page 23, I'll talk to Jay about this. He mentioned, I think last time, striking the provision for constables, that they were a state office. I think that's correct. It is a state office. It was my understanding that we were trying to be consistent and provide for all county elected officials. That's why we included the district public defender and the district attorney general, even though they're really not county positions, they're state positions. I don't know if I'll speak to him about that as maybe including it. I'm not worried that if it's not included, the positions no longer exist. I just think it would be consistent with the overall.
Those positions do exist.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. What I'm saying is, I don't think if you fail to include a provision in the charter for the position, that the positions fail or they no longer exist after the charter goes into effect.
I don't think it would affect either way.
Correct.
No. I think it's important to have that.
But neither would.
Constables will be in accordance with state law, and they will do what the state law says they should do if we have them.
But neither would. But we've got district attorney general here and district public defender. Neither would those offices not exist if we didn't include them. So it's up to you all, and it's up to Jay. Also, he knows a lot more about Anderson County and the position of constable than I do.
If they're not county offices, why would we even consider putting them in here?
Well, I think it was, that's how we originally had it. We didn't have anything but county offices in the charter. We had the property assessor, the trustee, the county clerk, register of deeds, county offices. But I think we had, there's history to that. I think there's a famous case in Knox County that John Owings, our partner, was involved in whenever he was law director. Excuse me. Knox County failed to include certain county offices in the charter, and the charter statutes basically stated that the offices had to be included.
That was probably the reason it took them 8 years or something to get their charter.
So, yeah, there was a litigation over those not being included, whether the charter was even effective since they weren't included. So I think Jay wanted to have a broad approach to that and include and list everything. So that's why, Commissioner White, that they were listed. Like I said, I don't think that fails if they're not included.
If we need a motion on that, I make the motion to leave the constable section in, because all it says is that they're vested and exercised in our county in accordance with state law. And the state law will, basically directs how they do business, what their authority is.
If we could wait for Jay, I would like his, unless he has some different notes on that, an opinion that would be beneficial to you all to hear. But
I don't want to get in the situation where Knox County was, where because they didn't have a district attorney or something listed, all of a sudden they ended up in court and spending God knows how much money.
I don't think that that's the case with the constables.
No.
They're elected in the county election.
If you'll
see, the county general election is when constables are elected.
And I've gotten that blurb there, notwithstanding any other law to the contrary.
Yeah.
County legislative body may abolish the office of constable. So there is some power that the county legislative body has over the position.
I've got a question on those constables. They have to be bonded, correctly?
Yes, sir. I think there is a provision for the bond.
Now, who pays for that?
That's their responsibility.
There is a provision in the charter for the bonding of county officers.
But they're not county officers, they're state.
They're state.
Yeah, the county's
They're not included in
Yeah,
that
that's
list,
right.
but they're bonded somehow, I guarantee
Yeah.
you. They must be bonded under the state. That's a state position.
Yeah, the county's
They can
got
arrest
no
the
money
sheriff.
whatsoever with the constables.
No, that's right, but I'm wondering where their bond comes from. Does the state pay for it? They pay for it individually?
I think they pay for it individually.
And if it runs out, then what?
I'm not familiar with the bond requirements of constables. It does say the duties and qualifications, oath of office, bond requirements shall be governed by the general laws of the state of Tennessee. I don't know if they have to provide their own bond or the state does that.
I mean, that's why in the past, our sheriff's departments, depending on who was been sheriff over the past 20 years, have been very, very reluctant to even use the constables in delivering papers or anything because of the liability that's associated with it. And so you'll see a lot of the constables are just helping nonprofits and things of that nature, but not in an official capacity with the different sheriff's departments.
But I know of one constable that was in a different county and actually got involved in trying to help apprehend some people and got into a shootout. And I just wonder, you know, if something happened, who would be liable for that? So it would be the state, it wouldn't be the county, correct?
Again, I'm not sure I'm not sure of the bond requirements for constables, but I can look at that.
There's more questions about constables, I guess, than any other
Yeah.
position.
Well, 100 years ago, they were very important.
Right.
Today, they're worthless.
And in fact,
I don't know if we use the word worthless, but they're limited need, certainly.
As Mr. Fritz was saying, the sheriff's department don't use them because of the liability. And I can go out and help a boot drive.
Yeah, a lot of nonprofits use them for traffic and this, that, and the other. Mostly it's ceremonial positions. Because my father's father, and people like that was a constable. I want to be a constable.
They've been helpful in a lot of ways, I guess.
In some ways.
And in that this part in the box is already part of state law, it doesn't have to be mentioned in the charter. That the county commission has the authority in accordance with this section of the law.
no,
810-101A3.
no, that will not be mentioned in the charter.
Yeah, that doesn't need to be in the
No.
charter. You just put that there.
That's just a
Right.
comment. I was just trying to
Yeah.
show that the
Yeah.
county legislative body does have some power over the position. So I'll if with your approval, I'll wait for Jay and his thoughts on that.
To me, this is another example of not changing the way business has been.
Let's just leave it like it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we?
That's what this does. It leaves you just like
Yeah.
that.
On page 27, I think Jay was going to get with me about this. He was going to discuss the teacher tenure statutes with, he was going to do some research, so we might not want to get into that until he has more information on that. Of course, we had that discussion last time about the private act and the teacher tenure law. If one was in effect, the other couldn't be.
I think it's okay as written.
Okay.
Yeah. Because that represents doing things the way we're already doing it, right?
If, like, if the way it's written is Anderson County adopts the Tennessee teachers tenure statutes. But just to restate my concern last time, and I don't know if Jay's concern was the same. I think he was going to get more information on that. But my concern was the statute that allows, or the applicability part of the statute, of the teacher tenure statute, states that that the teacher tenure statute cannot take effect or operation in any county that has a private act on teacher tenure law. And so there is a private act that's on the back of your charter here, Chapter 465. So that's the concern there, that there's an existing private act and that the statutes can't operate in the county if there is an existing private act. So we either have to adopt the teacher tenure statutes or remain with the private act. That was my concern. Now, I don't know. It was my understanding that the county does operate under the teacher tenure statutes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, but isn't there also a provision when we do a charter, we can say the following private acts are the only ones that remain in effect?
Correct. And that's what I have on Appendix A and B in the last. But according to the notes, whenever we went over the private acts in existence, one of the ones to keep was the teacher's private act.
Okay.
So
in
that
this case,
was.
we would need to delete that from the active.
That's my understanding. Now, Jay was going to get some more information on this issue.
Okay, well, it would be my opinion and even a motion that any private act that we no longer operate under not be included as an effective private act if the charter is adopted. See what I'm saying? I mean,
I think we did that.
yeah.
And this was the one that that he had a question about. I think the rest of them we voted on.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. I mean, but I'm saying if there's any private act that we in fact intend, and we are already not following that old private act, that we not leave it, that it not be left on the list of effective private acts. And we went through the list to try to delete all those.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like there's one we might have left there that this would contradict. Because this is newer law than the private act. And private acts quite often stay in effect even if there's a new law, unless the new law specifically cancels private acts.
I think that's why he wanted discussion, because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But we went over the others.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah,
it's-
yeah.
And we left that one in there till we got this one clarified. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
And I was told by the director of schools that, years ago, there was a lawsuit that, people were wrongfully demoted or dismissed, and, they won their case, and that all three of them no longer work for the school system, so the private act's null and void. Now, whether that takes care of it or not, I don't know, but that's what I was told.
I think we need to check to make sure that
Well-
that whatever we adopt will not change the way business is being done.
The thing about it is, the real conflict with the tenure law is how many years the 1940, I believe it was a 51 Act or 41 Act?
41.
41 Act, 3 years for tenure. And that was in the same classroom. I mean, the physical classroom and all that. But the new law, what is it, 5 years now, Bob?
About 5 years.
So,
And it's very specific about who's eligible for tenure, how you get it. I mean, I looked through our private act, we gave tenure, that act, or if I'm thinking about the right one, gave tenure to all kinds of people who are not anymore, because of
Not-
state law,
yeah,
are not
yeah.
eligible for tenure. I mean, the state law takes precedence.
and
Yeah.
here was the thing that we were told. If tenure was granted to people under that local tenure law, and they didn't meet the specifications that was required by the state. You couldn't dismiss the people because of the local tenure law, and the system had to pay 100% of that salary because the state couldn't pay any part of it. So, take it out. Yeah.
The private act, correct?
Yes.
Scratch- okay. Okay. I've revised on page 29, section H. This is a minor language change. I've revised the definition of resolution. The way it was worded seemed like it was geared specifically toward issuance of bonds, notes, and other evidence of indebtedness. The way I've drafted it now is, I think, more in line with what a resolution is. Jay will, I would like Jay's opinion on how this is drafted, but I think this is more appropriately drafted as to the correct definition of resolution.
That's a point of clarification, right?
Correct, more clarification. On page 31,
And so we're going with the changes made in H, is that correct? Just for clarification, we're kind of all nodding our heads, but are we agreeing with the changes that were made on page 29 to part H?
Do we need to vote?
I think we certainly need clarity
Yeah, that's what I said. He was going to refer to Jay on that one, and
on this one too.
I would like Jay's opinion.
Okay, okay, that's fine. We can wait on that one.
Page 31, section 706.
what about page 30?
This is the one we went over earlier. That's the first thing that we
Okay,
took
that's
on
right.
review committee.
That's right.
On page 31, section 706, I've added gender and political affiliation there as under this discrimination prohibited. There was discussion about that last time. I don't think anything was decided. So I've provided it there, and if you all would
Yeah,
like to
I have a
include it.
question about C. Because I thought we got away from it being from a gubernatorial election to being a general election. The last general election instead of gubernatorial.
Which one do you want?
Didn't we do that? On page 30, C,
Oh.
voters of the county may frame. It has to do with the signed by qualified voters of the county equal in number to 25%. I thought that we had changed that though to a county general election, the last county general election, not the last gubernatorial election. That's what I recall, that we
Mhm.
made some kind of a change there.
I believe that's correct.
Now, we were concerned because sometime in an basically unchallenged gubernatorial election, you can have incredibly small numbers. In fact, this charter is here because 1,776 was the number of signatures it took to get the charter commission
I
put
would
into
have to go
place.
back over the minutes and look at that to make sure that does ring a bell.
We did that the
Yeah,
last
I
meeting,
recommend
didn't we?
we have Jay look at that. Would that be good? That'll be another one we have Jay look at. Give him something to do when he gets better.
We're on 31.
Yes, sir. 31, I've added gender and political affiliation to Section A. No elected official, administrator, director, or employee of Anderson County shall discriminate against any person based on their race, sex, religion, age, gender, nationality, or political affiliation. Like I said, gender and political affiliation, Jay brought that up as possibly being included, so I've provided for it here, and you all can decide if you want that included or.
How is gender different from sex?
I don't,
He's trying
All
to be,
depends upon how many sexes you think there are.
Is that it? Okay.
Gavin?
I don't
I'm
need to get-
not
we don't need to get
You-
You ever heard
do
the
you-
term gender identity?
let me ask you something. Do you think, other than just being politically correct, do you think this, with today's society, that we need to put that in there?
Again, it's not for me to decide. A charter is a forward-looking document, but again, you can always have the Charter Review Committee amend it to include any other classes that need protection going forward. Jay mentioned it as a possible inclusion. I'm a little bit reluctant to answer my opinion whether it should be included. Frankly, I don't know. It may be something that you all just leave for a future charter review committee, or the proposed amendment by the people or the legislative body. Or
My comment would be if it isn't an issue, then having it there doesn't hurt anything.
Well, I agree with that. And the other part is, I think the state will take care of that long before the charter could change.
yes.
So I'd say leave it out.
Okay.
That's my opinion. What do you think? What's everybody think?
I think leaving it there doesn't hurt anything, and it could become an issue. Because right now, I read a lot of stuff, and whether I agree with it all or not
Right.
is another whole issue. But gender identity, whether we like it or not, personally,
It's yours to-
is a big deal.
A big deal.
And to not mention gender now we're not going through all the different kind of genders that we think might be. We're just saying gender. I think we're being very general, but not leaving anything out.
So just leave it like it's written? Anybody object to that?
I agree with you.
So would somebody like to make a motion, one way or the other?
I mean, it's got sex already, so it already covers men and women.
Right.
Exactly.
Leave it in there.
Is that a motion?
Does it need a motion?
Right now it does.
I make that a motion. We leave the word gender in there.
Second.
Motion made and second, leave gender in there. Mr. Clerk, roll call vote.
Who was the second? Commissioner Fritz?
Aye.
Commissioner Smalley?
Aye.
Commissioner Isbell?
No.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Meade?
Aye.
And Chairman Sunshine?
Aye.
Aye, and 1 no.
Motion passes.
Was that to include political affiliation also? I don't know if we had any discussion.
I took that as a given.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that was the only change to the change
Okay.
that was being possible.
Now, Gavin, I've got some information
The
for
maker
you.
of the motion, did you intend for it to include the political affiliation part?
I didn't even consider it, but yes, I meant for it to include that.
Chuck, you accept that for the second? Okay. The last meeting, we go back, why, Commissioner Fritz made a motion to change the percentage to 25% of persons who voted in the last gubernatorial election in Anderson County. Seconded by Commissioner Smallridge, motion passed. Commissioner Fritz made a motion to change the time frame for the petition for an amendment to 50 days from 75 days. Motion failed. But, was that what we were looking for?
I think so, yeah. So if you go back to page 30 on C, I've
Hey.
included, I'm sorry.
Okay, this is section 805.
Yes, sir. It's now been changed to 705.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And so if, I believe if you read further on down in the minutes, it says there was a motion passed for 60 days for the.
Yeah, that's what we have here.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So that should be, everything should be good on C is the way it's written.
Okay.
Okay.
Quickly, on page 31, it was, I believe, requested last meeting that the subsection B there, under 706, be changed from the mayor to the legislative body to appoint an administrative official to enforce the provisions. On page 32, section 708, I think Jay had some more notes on conflicts of interest. I believe I had accounted for the recently enacted amendment to the statute, 55112, and that's what that big red blob is in D. They amended the conflicts of interest provision. I believe I've accounted for that, but I think he does have some further notes on D. In subsection E, I think he wanted to grandfather in known issues as to elected officials or employees supervising or managing relatives, grandfather those in, known issues in. So I've drafted it to state that in accordance with state law, no elected or appointed official or employee of Anderson County shall supervise or manage his or her relative within Anderson County government, except as are known and in existence on the effective date of this charter. It was also mentioned that the definition of related to and relative was to follow the county's nepotism policy in the school board.
Right.
I've done that. I think the definition of relative that was included in there previous to this was a bit broader, including foster parents. And I think step siblings and step parents. The county's nepotism policy is a bit more narrow. And I've made it, so in other words, just to state plainly, relative is defined as it is already in the county's nepotism policy. And we grandfather in known issues as to.
Yeah. The problem I have, though, with this section is that these rules change under state law on a fairly regular basis. And if we have a charter that says it one way, then the state changes the state law. We're gonna have to do whatever state law says.
Yeah, charter changes automatically.
Yeah. And so it seems like if the charter just says that this will be done, and this will be done with these things in mind, and remain in compliance with the Tennessee state law, or without going into all the details. Because right now, I mean, we got this thing where even if you're voting on the entire budget for the county, and your wife works for someplace in the county, you have to make this declaration like we had somebody do last night, because he works for the county. But they might change that, the fact that that declaration is, I think, is kind of silly, actually. I mean, you've already had to make the same, you already had to abstain for cause on the individual amount for that organization already. The fact that at the very end, you have to stand up and declare it again. I wouldn't be at all surprised that in the next General Assembly, that part of the law goes away. You know, I mean, so, in the whole intent of this is that regardless, we have to comply with the state law anyhow. So why don't we just kind of say that this is the general purpose,
Well,
and then that we will comply with state law?
but is that not a given? If state law changes, the charter changes?
Well, what I think this section is designed to accomplish is there are multiple different conflicts of interest statutes in state law that may apply to laws of local application, or, you know, different laws of local application, or if a county has one program or whatever. I think it's trying to encompass all of those. And I think there may be some county power here as to purely county affairs. So listing it is not bad. Knox County lists it, and Shelby County does as well. I do agree that if state law changes, then, and most of these are, you'll see the introductory clause states in accordance with state law.
In accordance with state law.
Right. Most of them do state that.
Let's leave it like it is.
I think we should
Yeah.
leave it in.
On page 34, section 711. It's the recall of elected county officials. There was a question last time as to whether circuit court clerks could be subject to recall. There's some disagreement in our office as to whether that's the case. I have a big, long blob here talking about ouster and recall of court clerks generally. From what we've seen so far, we kind of hesitate to state that circuit court clerks are subject to recall. County clerk, of course, being a county elected office is, but the nature of the position of circuit court clerk being a judicial branch position, I'm not sure that position can be subject to recall. Like I said, there's some disagreement in our office. I think it's largely unresolved. Knox County exempts the judicial branch, including court clerks, from recall. I believe Shelby County does as well. I know that there was in the minutes from last time to include circuit court clerk. I just don't know if that's possible. myself, but I think Jay would have a good opinion on that as well. So if we could get his thoughts on that, I would appreciate it. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
I have something that just came to mind. Is back in the section that talks about changes to the charter and stuff, do we have something that says basically that the legislative body, to comply with changes in state law, can make changes, can make changes to the charter based upon changes to Tennessee state law? I guess that's what I'm talking about. If the law changes saying that now this is different, can we put in the charter someplace that the legislative body, upon 2/3 vote or whatever, can change the charter right then, based upon a change in the requirements of state law?
If the state law changes, it's
Yeah.
automatically changed, isn't it?
Well,
Isn't it?
I haven't seen anything that says we can change this except for everything with a referendum and a vote and all that kind of stuff.
I don't see
I
how the
think-
legislative body can make those changes.
Because state law requires that our charter stay in compliance with state law. And so if the state law has changed, it seems like we should have a mechanism to
I know you've got to follow
comply.
the state law, but do you just follow the state law, or do you make a change in the charter? Do you make a written change in the charter? I don't know.
So I'll make 2 points. To Commissioner White's point that the charter changes automatically, my understanding would be that if state law changed, the language of the charter itself would not change, but the state law would trump the language of the charter.
Yeah.
On the second point, charter form of government being what it is, there are some things that the charter can change within the county government, that if the state law changes, the charter would still be in effect as to county, insofar as it deals with purely county affairs. So I don't think, I think it's a good idea to have something in there that says if the law changes, then the charter will change in accordance with state law. But there also may be some things in the charter that are not in accordance with state law generally. For example, you can change offices, you can change county offices, as long as you provide for the duties, qualifications, and things of that sort for a county office, it doesn't have to be called the property assessor, for example. So there are some changes that can be made through a charter that are, every state law change will not have an effect on the charter, is what I'm trying to.
Oh, yeah, I understand that.
Mhm.
But I think there are gonna be places where a change in state law
Of course, sure.
makes what we have in the charter violate state law, in which case we'd be required to cover the state law anyhow, but we wouldn't be able to change the charter under the way it's written right now. It could be that there's not a provision under state law that allows us to do that, so I don't. God knows Tennessee state law is not, it's not simple. The whole process is.
As I'm learning.
What we're talking about right now. Okay. On page 35, and it was enacted in 2016.
Okay. Anything else?
Chairman, if our counselor is finished, let's adjourn.
Well, we gotta decide when the next meeting's gonna be.
You said it and call
July 5th.
it. July the 5th is good. I make that a motion.
That's a holiday. The 4th and the 5th are both holidays.
July 6th.
Make that a motion.
It's Wednesday.
Okay.
July 6th, okay.
You think, Kevin, that this can be cleared with Jay?
Yes, sir. I will contact him, providing that he is up to the challenge.
Same
his,
time.
hopefully he does, his surgery goes well. Thank you, Commissioner White.
Anything else? Chuck?
Under that constable bond, right here it says under that Tennessee Code, says Chapter 10, Constables in general, 8-10-106 surety bond. It said, before entering upon and the duties of the office, every constable shall give a bond. The bond shall be approved by the county legislative body and prepared in accordance with the Chapter 19 of this title. The county served by the constable may be elect to pay the cost of obtaining and recording the constable's bond as required by this section, but we don't in Anderson County. And if the county does not elect to pay such bond, the constable shall pay all costs obtaining and recording the bond. The bond shall be in a penalty of not less than $4,000 and no more than $8,000 at the discretion of the body, and shall be payable to the state and conditioned for the faithful discharge of the duties of the office and the prompt payment to the proper persons for all monies collected and received by the constable in the virtue of the office. So the constable pays all that himself.
So
The
without,
county may, but it's not required.
Right.
yeah.
Sometime
Thank you.
somebody's gonna have to explain to me what a constable does.
He's a state law enforcement officer that can arrest the sheriff. There's not enough, the only other person in the state that can arrest the sheriff is the governor.
Meeting is adjourned.
What else does he do, or she, or he?
They can
They
actually.
can enforce traffic law, they, I mean, basically.